Well, hey there, welcome to Journey Church Online. My name is Chuck Van Hook, and I'm the online pastor here at Journey. And if I haven't had the opportunity to meet you yet, I would love to connect with you in the chat today, or you can shoot me an email, chuck@ourjourney.com. I can answer any questions that you may have about Journey and what's going on around here. But if you don't want to email me, you can hop on over at ourjourney.news, and you can find all of that information, stuff on giving, information on kids ministry, student ministry, ways to get connected around here. All of that stuff is at ourjourney.news. So if you've got any questions, head that way. We've got some invite links. You can click share on Facebook to let your friends know that we're getting started with worship here in just a minute. Worship and worshiping together is always better with more people. So use that invite link. Let everybody know that worship's starting right now.
We are in the fourth week of a series called Tighten the Knot, and it's about relationships. Any kind of relationships, we've all got them. One thing we've learned is that there are over 7 billion people on planet Earth, and you can't go somewhere, anywhere, without bumping into someone. So how your relationships go determines how your life goes. We've kind of wrapped up all of our front end thoughts. Want to finish with one today, and it has to do with expectations. We all have expectations when it comes to relationships. The truth of it, we all enter adult life with a whole series of expectations. As a matter of fact, some of us enter into it not just with expectations, we have kind of this mental calendar going on. Now, these may not fit yours exactly, but I guarantee you at least some of it lands with you. Check this out. Before you get through into adult life, you say, well, I'm going to be graduated by, and you may not have an exact date, but for some of you, it's by the time I'm 17 or 18, or through college by the time I'm 23 or 24 or 35 or 40, or I'm going to be married by, and even if it's not a for sure, in the back of your mind, you can kind of picture yourself that I could kind of see me married by the time I'm 25 or 30, or never, ever, ever, because I see a lot of other people who shouldn't have. Maybe it's I'm going to have children by, maybe it's I'm going to start a business, or I'm going to get my career launched. We have this little internal clock. Sometimes we write them down. Sometimes we tell people about it, but almost all of us have some of those. Maybe you have this one going on right now. I want to retire by the time and that keeps moving forward in life. When you start, you go, man, if I could retire by the time, I hear people all the time say, if I could retire by the time I'm 45, or I'm 40, or I'm 50, or if I could just get out from under having to do this every day. Well, most of us have some of those things going on. Many of those things contain a tremendous amount of relationships. Here's one thing we know about expectations of adults, is that no one envisions their future all alone. Now, I don't know what that means. That may not mean married, or that may not mean a specific thing for you, but nobody, when they play out the movie in their mind of the way their life is going to look, envisions their life alone. That means we have expectations. When those expectations are unmet, that's usually where our frustration grows. How we respond when the frustration grows determines a lot about our lives. That's kind of where we want to go through our day. For some people, you have all these expectations or dreams or hopes or whatever you want to call them. And sometimes they just come true and everybody just, yeah, it's a party. We write about those people and they do a lot of stuff on social media. They share that because if your dreams are coming true, dang it, everybody else needs to know. For some people, your dreams start to come true. You feel like some of those expectations you had begin, but then over the course of time, you feel like maybe it's not working as well as I thought it would. Maybe some of your I do's are starting to be I wonder if I do's, or maybe I don'ts, or maybe the person with whom you're connected now begins to question some of those things. Maybe some of those plans that someday we're going to have some kids, and now you're wondering if you ever can, ever will. Maybe you're wondering if you ever should have. I don't know how that works for you, but it's sometimes your dreams come true. Sometimes your dreams come true, but then over the course of time you go, it was kind of just a temporary thing, but now it's not so good. For some people, your dreams don't seem to be coming true at all. For some people, even worse, it's like your dreams partially become true, but it's because of something you've done, that you've made decisions. You've taken actions, you've done things that you regret, and you realize that some of your dreams or some of your expectations aren't happening. And honestly, if we could just cut down to the chase, a lot of it's because of you. And then for some of us, our dreams aren't coming true or our expectations aren't occurring. And it's not because of something I've done, it's because something someone has done to me. I didn't sign up for that. It's somebody else who said, I will, and didn't. It's someone else who vowed but didn't stay faithful. It's someone else who's abandoned the things that you thought you could expect. And the amount of pain that goes with that is overwhelming. For some, it seems like your dreams will come true till the day they quit coming true, and now you wonder, what do I do from here? Maybe it begins to feel like all of my dreams were just dreams, and I'm not even sure what to dream anymore. And so maybe that's you. If you're a person who had expectations and they haven't played out the way you thought they would, that probably means you're breathing. It probably means you're normal, but it also comes with an awful lot of pain in the background. For some people, the kids that you dreamed of having are acting out or moving in directions that you never thought they would, and the amount of pain that you're experiencing makes you question everything. Is it you? Is it God? Is it them? Is it our culture? Why? What do I do with that? How do I fix it? How do I not fix it? It comes with so many details. For friends that you thought would be friends forever but seem to have opted out or tapped out for whatever reason, what do you do with that? Maybe it seems like everybody else's dreams are coming true and you're watching them live it out in their world, and it makes it that much harder for you. For some of us, for some people, you're hearing people say, my second marriage is starting to feel a lot like my first marriage, and that's frustrating. But for some, it's frustrating because you're like, second marriage? I haven't even had a first. Don't screw up your second one until I have a chance at the first one. We all have expectations. All of those expectations get challenged over time, especially relational ones. And when they don't come true, we all respond or we all react. Can I just ask you honestly? Do you have some unmet expectations relationally? Are there some that you thought were going to bring so much joy that are bringing so much pain? Are there some that you're about to give up on or you're question marking right now? If that is you, it makes you in the mainstream of humanity. And I just want to say, for some that are on the back end of that, and you're just hurting and you're disillusioned and you're a little bit angry or a little bit hurt or a little bit on the edge of giving up, I just want to say I am so sorry that that's where you are. I'm not sorry for you, like pity, because that doesn't help you. I'm not saying I'm sorry because I'm so good and you're so hurting. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I'm sorry because heartbreak hurts, that it cuts so deeply within us. And so this morning we want to start out by acknowledging that almost all of us have expectations that go unmet. And when it does, it hurts to the core of who we are. I bet that's true for you.
All right, so here's the deal. We're gonna take a time out here for a second, because around here at Journey, it's not our goal for you to just sit and hear and listen to another message. You can get that anywhere, really, if you wanted to. It's our goal that we would let these messages, let the words of God and what Chris is saying today speak to us and challenge us in our lives. So before we move on, we've just got I've got a few questions for you. When Chris talks about the relational unmet expectations that we face in our lives, for you, is that something easy for you to pinpoint, or is that something that's a little bit more difficult for you to pinpoint? I think we've all got them. There's relationships all over the place where I think that we can just pinpoint and say, yeah, I really wasn't expecting to be in this place right now at this point in my life. It seems like it would be pretty simple. And so can you pinpoint those? Like specifically, what are some of those relational expectations in your life that you're struggling through right now? Maybe, you're sitting and you're thinking to yourself, man, I just knew growing up that mom and dad were just gonna love me. They were just gonna provide for me and give me this great just life of growing up, this loving home, but fill in the blank didn't come through on that. Or maybe I've graduated high school, I've graduated college, I'm in my mid-20s, mid-30s, mid-40s, wherever you're at, and I really was thinking that I would be married, that I would have a significant other, but I don't, and I'm lonely. Maybe you're thinking, man, I've done everything I could for my kids. I've given them everything that I can, that I know how to do, and the relationship is just so rocky right now. They're not where I expected them to be as a child, and I'm not where I expected myself to be as a parent. Maybe you're in a relationship and you're married and you're thinking, I was really expecting my husband or my wife to stick to those vows that they made to me on my wedding day, but they didn't, and now I'm hurting. Take a second. If you've got pen and paper, write that down, jot it down. Make note of those situations, of those unmet expectations that you are finding yourselves smack dab in the middle of right now. And as we jump back in, let's dig into that a little bit more with Chris.
Thanks, Chuck. The truth is, we all deal with unmet relational expectations. Here's where we want to go. The point is not just to get you to a spot where you say, yeah, we've all got them and life sucks. It's just to get to a point where we understand that when we identify them, now we can do something with them. God does not want you to live with just broken hopes or broken dreams or broken expectations. He wants to do something with it. So here's where we pick up. How we respond to unmet relational expectations will determine the shape of our life. Most of us have been shaped by some of those, even from early in life. For some of us, way early in life. We grew up in a home where there were unmet expectations or even unmet things you didn't know to expect. But to think that that hasn't shaped us, you'd be crazy. How we react in those moments determines a lot of our outcomes. Now, throughout the Bible, there's great examples. I think the best example of this one is a guy named David. Now, I need you to remember this. We are headed somewhere. Matter of fact, as we go along, when you go, why is he talking about that? I needed this in the back of your mind, you to go, oh, he's headed somewhere. I'll probably remind you, but don't give up. We're headed somewhere. Story of David, if you're familiar with it, it's pretty easy. He's all through the Bible. People have talked about it for years and years. If you're kind of new to church, new to the Bible thing, it'll be easy to catch up. David was a guy that when he was a little kid, just a shepherd kid in his family business, did what everybody else didn't want to do. They stuck him out being a shepherd, and one day the prophet Samuel, his job was to go find the next king of Israel, and he went to David's family and went through the whole group and eventually chose little David. David's just a kid stuck out there. After that, he left, and David went right back to where he started because it wasn't time, because there was already a king. Well, fast forward a few years, and David's dad sends him to go check on his brothers because his brothers were part of the military and they were fighting against an enemy, and they were a place called the Valley of Elah, and he goes to check on his brothers, and while he's there, there's this enormous man, and even if you're not a church person, you've heard the story of this man named Goliath who was just bigger than everybody else, and he came down every day and he taunted the army of Israel over and over. And no one stood up to him. And David went, and he saw life a little differently about most things. He didn't see this guy taunting Israel. He saw this guy taunting and mocking his God. And while Goliath was bigger than anybody in the army, Goliath was not bigger than David's God. And so David strapped on whatever he could and went, slays Goliath. And from that moment forward changes his whole life, because now he's like a hero. I mean, he's trending on every media platform. He's everywhere. There's songs written about him. Everybody knows the story. Well, now if you've been projected to be a king, this is a great start. As a matter of fact, the king that was in place already, his name is Saul, chose him and brought him there, and he married Saul's daughter. So now you've killed this guy, you're trending everywhere, you're the son-in-law of the king. This is the way life is supposed to shape out. But not too far down the road, Saul freaks out. He kind of goes a little bit bonkers. Now, a big piece of the reason is David's popularity was driving him crazy. It was actually said that David was more popular than the king. And if David was more popular than the king, then in probability, David was going to be a lot more popular than the king's son. And that is who Saul wanted to be the next king of Israel. And so the way he dealt with it is he said, I'm going to destroy, try to kill, eradicate David. Tries to kill him, can't, so now David runs. He's on the run. He ends up far, far away, kind of out in the middle of nowhere in the wilderness. Saul's chasing with a whole army. David's hiding. This is not expectations coming true. This is, I've done everything I'm supposed to do, and this is what's happening to me. What's up with you, God? What's up with this for me? If you ever find yourself alone with your expectations relationally not coming true, there is a tendency for all of us to panic. And when we panic, we take things into our own hands. For David, he starts wandering around. He goes where he won't be found. He ends up in this really small community, little village called Nob. And there he meets with the head priest, and almost all of the people in this community were priests. The head priest, his name was Ahimelech. This guy, we'll just call him Hemi for short because we'll never be able to say that name right if we keep going. This guy, he meets with him and he goes to him and says, hey, I just need help. I'm here all by myself and I have nothing, which had to ring hollow. This guy knows who David is. He knows he's the son-in-law of the king. He knows he is this guy that's been trending. He's popular. He's got everything. He carries authority. He's wealthy. And now he just shows up and he doesn't explain. He kind of lies his way through about why he's there. And he says, hey, do you have any food? And this guy's got to be thinking, well, why would you, the king's son-in-law, show up with no food? And he's like, oh, I had to leave in a hurry. I don't know what his whole story was. But as he begins to talk to him, he begins to share. And he said, do you have any weapons? Do you have anything? I'm out here all by myself. How am I going to survive? Matter of fact, if you look at the verse in 1 Samuel 21, it says it this way. Ahimelech says, I have only the sword of Goliath, the Philistine. He said, I have one thing. The only thing we have in town, we're just a bunch of priests. We're not like a weapons arsenal here. We don't have anything for you. The only thing we have is something you'll be familiar with. And he pulls out this massive sword, and it's the sword that David took from Goliath when God delivered Goliath to him. It was a visual representation of God's faithfulness to David in a time when David felt all alone. You would like to believe for David, this would have reminded him that God is looking out for me, that God is with me, He is for me as he looks backward at what God has done. But David's not looking backward, remembering. He's looking forward, and he is panicked and he's desperate. And whenever we're panicked and whenever we're desperate, and often when we're alone, we take matters into our own hands. Instead of it seeing it that the sword would protect David, just the opposite happened. He took the sword. Matter of fact, he says these words, there is none like it. David replied, so give it to me. This was something David had no business taking, but he took anyway. And instead of it being the thing that would keep him alive, sadly, it sealed the fate for the guy that gave it to him. Right after David left, word got all the way back to Saul, the king, that David had been there and that Ahimelech had protected him. He had aided and cared for him. And it made Saul so angry and so jealous that he sent an entire group of men from his army, and they came in to this place called Nob, and they asked the questions, and these guys had to be going, well, of course we helped. It's your son-in-law. Why wouldn't we help? But Saul couldn't have cared less, and he destroyed everyone that lived there. The men, the women, even the infants were killed. Saul's jealousy raged so strong. Well, soon word got back to David, and David was completely overwhelmed. He had now caused the lives of all of those people to be lost. Not only that, everybody around knew that David had lied. Everyone knew that David was a fraud. Everyone knew that David was hiding. So now, because he took matters into his own hand, he was more alone, and he was more panicked. And what started to be bad got worse. If you could just fast forward a pretty good jump down the road now, David finally actually becomes the king. So now David is aged some, and he's given the place that when he was a teenager was promised to him. And when he becomes the king, he does these crazy ups and downs when it comes to his relationships, just like most of us. Some of them are great and mind-blowing, and some of them are horrible. Some of his dreams came true, and some of them got worse. Some of it was because of what he did. Some of it was because of what was done to him. But over the course of time, he began to run into some huge problems. Eventually, his moral authority was completely given away because of an affair he had with Bathsheba. And not just the affair that he had, but also once he did it, relationally, expectations weren't met. And when they weren't met, he took matters into his own hands. And then if you know the story, he literally had her husband killed. And as a result, once again, found himself alone and desperate. It just seems to be a repeating cycle. I guess part of what we want to say to you today is when expectations are unmet relationally, there's a tendency for all of us to take matters into our own hands every time we do. Hey, listen, whatever you feel like you're missing relationally in your life, it is real, it is understood, and of course it is significant. But can I just say over again to you, when you take matters into your own hand, you take God out of the equation. And when you take God out of the equation, normally more pain ensues. For David, it got worse. David had a family. He had sons, 2 sons that were lost, but he had one son that was his favorite son. His name was Absalom. Absalom was a guy that was built to be a king someday, and that was David's goal. The Bible describes him and said he had literally no flaws head to toe. I mean, he was that guy. He was on the front of every magazine. He was the poster boy for what you look like if you want to grow up and be a king. That was his son, Absalom. David loved him, was over the moon for him. Absalom, however, didn't see David the same way. David was not a good father. He wasn't a good leader often. As a matter of fact, Absalom's sister had been raped and David did nothing about it. And because of that, Absalom grew so angry with his father that, read the story sometime in 2 Samuel if you want to go back and read it. It's this fascinating story. For 4 years, Absalom set aside his time and his focus, and he started building a group of people that would follow him because someday he wanted to take over his father's throne from him. Day to day, he recruited and won the hearts of people till eventually he had so much power that everything began to change. Matter of fact, some of David's high-ranking officials came to him and said, "You've got a problem. Your son is going to come to town. He's going to fight you. He's going to overthrow the city and kill the people in the city, and he's going to take over your spot as king." David's not a young man now. David's in his 60s, best we can figure. He's lived a long life. He's lived high points and the lowest of low points. Relationally, he has prospered, and relationally, he has been a nightmare. And now he finds himself on the back end of his life as the king of a nation that follows him well. His life is all set. He has got one son that he loves more than anything, and that son is trying to destroy him. And so to save the city, to save the kingdom, he decides, gets all his group around him, and he says, okay, let's leave. We'll get out of the way and let him come and take over the throne. It's better than having a fight and tens of thousands of people getting killed, me getting killed. And so he hatches a plan and says, let's get out of the way. As a matter of fact, as he begins to, some of his people say, we'll stand and fight. And he goes, no, we'll go together. And so they all line up a caravan, and they're leaving town before Absalom can come and take over and kill everyone there. And if we're not here, then it'll be peaceful, and that's best for everyone. And as they begin to make their way through, as a matter of fact, I'll just give you a little glimpse. Check out this verse. It begins to tell what it was like as they begin to walk out of town, this whole caravan of people. And the people are confused in the city. Why would our king leave us? And we trust our king, and what's going to happen to us? It said, everyone cried loudly as the king and his followers passed by. They crossed the Kidron Valley, and then they went out, and then this interesting little phrase, they went out toward the wilderness. And in David's life, this is a sequence that happens over and over. When relationships fail, he ends up in the wilderness. And I just want to say this, maybe that is you right now. Maybe you feel like when it comes to my hopes and dreams, especially around relationships, I'm at a spot in life and it feels like I am out in the middle of nowhere. And if that's you, you can relate to David's heartbreak right now. Whatever got you there, maybe his was because of his own actions, maybe yours is not, but either way, heartbreak breaks hearts, and breaking hearts are difficult to manage. And so he finds himself leaving again. One more little detail, by the way, we're headed somewhere with this. Don't give up, and we're almost there. For David, he ends up at a spot as they're leaving town. The religious leaders come to him and they say, we've got to help you. We're for you. You're our king and we want to support you. Matter of fact, look at this next verse. It says, Zadok and the Levites, those are the religious leaders, they came along and they were carrying the Ark of the Covenant of God. Now, if that's kind of a new thing for you, the Ark of the Covenant it's where the original 10 Commandments and other religious relics that meant a lot were housed. But it was more than that. It is where they believed that the Spirit of God, where God actually stayed. And they were like, if you're leaving, let's take God with us. And it was their way of manipulating the situation, of saying, hey, listen, we can leave, but God is with us. It'll tell the rest of the world that God's on our side, that God is with us. We'll take him with us. And then even Absalom won't have a chance against us because we have God with us. Now, David is given another opportunity where he is desperate and where he's panicked and where he's leaving and where he's heartbroken. But I will tell you something about David is he eventually learned. As a matter of fact, he told him in the next verse, he said to Zadok, I want you to go and take the Ark of the Covenant back to where it belongs. I want you to put it back. We're not going to take it with us. We're not going to manipulate. We're not going to try to play this thing out in our own strength. We're going to allow God to do what God chooses to do. And it leads to this last landing point. It is where we've been shooting for the whole time. Listen to David's words as he speaks to Zadok. He said, then the king said to Zadok, take the ark of God back into the city, and if I find favor in the Lord's eyes, he will bring me back and let me see it and his dwelling place again. David says, listen, I have tried to manipulate. I have taken things into my own hands over and over. It always leads to more hurt. And this time, I'm just going to do what I know I should do. And I'm going to trust if God finds favor with me, then he'll bring me back. But he doesn't finish there, and this is so strong. Hey, listen, this is our dream for every one of us that goes through relationship struggle or relationship longing, is that we can reach this point. But if he says, I am not pleased with you, then I am ready. Let him do, here's the words, let him do to me whatever seems good to him. It is the place where we take our hands from whatever we're gripping. And often what we're gripping is just an expectation. It's just a hope or a dream. It is just us saying, I think I deserve, and why would God give it to someone else and not to me? And why is he not coming through in my hurt and my pain right now? It is just opening our hands and saying, let me do what I know I should do. And if I find favor with God and he brings what I'm hoping for to me, yea, but I will trust him over taking matters into my own hands. Can I ask you, in your relationship world, what are you longing for that you're missing? I bet there's something. Where are you hurting? Where is it for you that everything inside of you goes, maybe I need to manipulate. Maybe it's where you were raised and there's deep hurts from that. And what you've done over the course of time is you just kind of put that in your little spot and pushed it aside, and it has affected everything in your life. Because of it, you manipulate everything because you never want to feel that way again. Can I just challenge you, maybe there's this beautiful peace when we can just open our hands to God and say, listen, I'm just going to trust you because I can't fix all of this. I can't bring it about. And if I find favor in your eyes, then give me just what I hope for. But even if I don't, I trust you to do what is best for me. You know what it is? It's when we actually allow God to be God. Instead of saying, God, here's what I want, and I'm going to fight for it and work for it and manipulate to get it, it is just saying, God, I will trust that you know what is best for me. For David in this moment, he didn't abandon his faith in God, even when it felt like God had abandoned him. Faith in action is not faith in action until there's something to be lost. And most of our faith stands just as long as everything goes okay, but we so often abandon our faith when it feels like God's not showing up. And there is a piece of life that requires us to trust God beyond what we can see. That is, by definition, faith. So 3 things you can do, and we're not going to give you a long list. They're just on one screen right here. We'll show it. Lean in toward God. Everything when expectations don't come true. This is when, for some of you, you're tempted not to show up at church anymore. It may be while you're watching this today and not sitting in a room full of people. That you've already taken one step and you're like, I don't know. I'm not giving up on God, but man, I'm just not sure anymore. The tendency is to panic, and when we panic, we usually head away. Lean in. Look up, because typically we look around to find our answers for everything. I'm going to grab the sword. I'm going to manipulate this thing. I am desperate. I'm going to swipe left or swipe right. My hope is found in my next app I can get. And can I just say, lean in toward God. Look up toward God. He is our only possibility for hope, and reach out to Him with open hands. Let go of whatever you're gripping that you think is going to be your fix relationally. Let go and allow God to be the difference maker in your world. I'll leave you with one phrase or one sentence that's been running through my mind the last few days as I prepared for this. We can't choose the hand we're dealt. And if you've been dealt a hand that you're not too crazy about right now, if you're going through some hurts right now that you never saw coming and you just wish you could find a quick fix for, you can't always choose the hand you're dealt. What it leaves for us is that we can trust the hand who dealt it. If you put your focus on the hand you've been dealt, you will probably spend most of your life going from hurt to hurt and spending a lot of time in the wilderness. Can I just say this to you? You can't trust the hand you're dealt. You can't choose the hand you're dealt, but you can trust the one who dealt it, the one who allows life to happen. He is worthy of our trust, and you can lean in and look up and reach out to Him. I just wonder where you're hurting most today. Is there any way you could just open your hands to Him? Don't panic. Panic leads to us taking life into our own hands, and our own hands is the least safe place in the world. The God who loved you enough to give His Son for you will be with you. Let's pray and ask God to do that now. So God, help us as we walk out the emotions and the relationships in our life. I don't know who it is that's watching this and listening to this today that is hurting so badly. And for some people, it's just a bunch of words, but for them, it is soul crushing to think about what's happening with their relationships. And we don't know what to do. We don't know how to deal with. And everything wants to say, I better do something to fix this. Would you help us trust you? Would you help us not abandon our faith when it feels like the person we base our faith in may have abandoned us? Would you help us remember that you've been good in the past and you will be good in the future? Would you help us look toward you and lean toward you, and with open hands trust the one who dealt, not just examine what we've been dealt. We ask it in your name. Amen.